It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. I am so glad you could be here with me today. Today, I wanted to start off with something really cool. So, as you know, I do a lot of podcast episodes that focus on some of the emails that I receive from Mike Cohn. Now, I've had the experience of meeting Mike a couple of times and I've talked to him. He's even recorded a couple of podcast episodes with me. I consider him to be a dear friend. And honestly, I consider him to be one of the best agilists on the planet. He's just awesome sauce. And with that being said, I want to talk about one more that he sent out. Now, if you ask me the question, who is the master of user stories? Who is the person that, if you have any question at all about user stories, user story mapping, where do you go? The answer is always the same. Mike Cohn, this is his thing. He has it down to a science. So I thought today I would focus on an email that I received from Mike Cohn that focuses on user stories. And today it's interesting because he talks about the level of detail that you should have in user stories. And for me, this is a question that I get asked probably every time I go and train an organization. Whether it's through a coaching capacity or certification capacity, people are always curious, is this the right level of detail? Should we have more? Should we have less? How does it play out? All this good stuff. So he starts off, he says, many of us are drawn towards detail. It feels good to know exactly what features a product will contain. It also feels good to know precisely how a feature will be implemented. Knowing the details of something just feels good. I'm going to pause there. I agree. I remember when I was working with an organization and they told a group of developers, we just need to recreate this process in the system. And they were just like, okay, so what do you want us to do? And I said, we want you to make it better. And I think that sometimes we just get that do this or do it this way, and we don't get all the details. And it causes us to feel like we're being led down a path where we don't know. And then, of course, the worst is when they say, well, whatever you do is going to be the right answer. Because the truth is, the second you do that, they say, well, that's not what I was thinking. So we need to make sure that we understand what the right answer is, whether the right answer is the right answer, and how it's going to be implemented. Um, Knowing the details certainly is good. It certainly feels better than being in the middle of the morass of open issues, undecided features, and general uncertainty that make up most projects. To bring order to this chaos, we attempt to remove uncertainty by adding additional details to our product backlog items. And we often do so long before the detail is actually needed. We often do so long before that detail is actually needed. This is important. I talk a lot about doing things in a timely fashion. And I hate to use this term, but I call it the last responsible moment. And it's one of those things where if we do things too far in advance, we're almost dictating how things are instead of making a story a placeholder for a future conversation. He gives an example. He says, suppose, for example, we decide to build a new travel booking website. Sorry, I have to laugh. This is the exact example that I use in my class. Anyway, let's continue. Like many similar sites, our site will help people book airfare and make hotel and rental car reservations. Someday, we'd like to allow our site visitors to book cruises as well. Ooh, that sounds good. But we're going to start with airplanes, hotels, and rental cars. So if we write a lot of product backlog items today about supporting cruise ship bookings, it's likely going to be wrong when we implement that functionality several years down the road. We've just wasted time. The simple truth is, the further away an item is from implementation, the less detail it should have. If I could put this on a t-shirt, I would, Mike. Here it is. The further away an item is from implementation, the less detail it should have. What might be less intuitive, however, is that even those stories that are coming up as soon as next sprint don't need to be fully fleshed out. In fact, trying to get to that level of precision is often almost as much a waste of time as including all the details for functionality that is years away from being implemented. Fact, fact, fact. I can't tell you how many times I find myself saying, and this is definitely something I include in my user story writing workshops. I talk about there's a difference between accuracy and precision. While what you hope for should be highly accurate, the more closely you align with precise, the more far away from the center of the target you get, which is really interesting. This same concept is true whether you're throwing darts, shooting a bow and arrow, whatever the case may be. Your goal should be accuracy or grouping, not necessarily precision. Because the second you get down into the minutia and try to get completely precise, it's going to make things a lot more difficult for you. But even when you understand this, the fact is it feels good to add that detail. It means it's a hard habit to break. Yeah. And I see both. I want to make sure I call devil's advocate here. I see it go both ways. I see organizations that give no detail, bring me a rock. And I see organizations that give way too much detail. Bring me an igneous rock that's this many millimeters by this many milliliters with a weight of no more than this many grams. And I mean, I think that either way, you're trying to become so precise that you're isolating or forging a path for you to be trapped in a corner. So, what you can say to team members who insist they know every tiny detail about a user story before working on it all, what do you tell those people? Right? So here's Mike's solution. He says, what I do is simple. I agree with them that they do need to know the answer to every open issue, but I remind them that they don't need to know all of those answers before they start executing the work. And I think that's the key. You sure do need those answers, but which of those do you need before starting? Or do you need them all before starting? I have what I call famous three words. My famous three words are help me understand. So a lot of times you'll find me saying, help me understand which of these pieces would be important for you to know beforehand. Help me understand why you might need to know them all. Sure, they may need to know some of these answers before starting, but it would be extremely rare for them to need to know every detail before they start. And I think that's the key. So for me, I love to help teams understand that we need to define how we're going to measure value. And value is measured and defined three ways. We have strategic value to the organization, we have consumer value, which is what someone's willing to pay, and what features they're looking for. And then we have the technical value. Is this going to help us solve an architecture infrastructure problem in the future? I think that if you look at it from those three perspectives before you start, it's going to help you figure out what the right amount of detail is. Once again, we should focus our attention on being accurate, not necessarily being precise. If we can do those things, it's going to help us write better user stories. All right, so here's your homework. If you're trying to write better user stories, I encourage you to study Bill Wake's model for INVEST, INVEST, and I also encourage you to look into Mike Cohn's Moscow. And I think that if you look into those two parameters, it's going to help you really understand that there needs to be more than just high, medium, or low priority when you're writing these user stories. And it's going to help you really triangulate and figure out what belongs where. In addition, I challenge you that if you have not ever had a fundamental story writing workshop, I know Mike has one coming up on May 3rd. I want to say it's like a 1-day class. We also do 1-day story writing workshops. So if you want to reach out to us at Agile Dad, we sure can help you get those stories in line and help you understand how to contextually break something down from an epic to a feature to a story to a task. Do we always have to go to the task level? When is it important? How do you do this outside of software? There's just so many incredible questions. I encourage you to reach out to us, learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. And I think if you do that, you'll be glad you did because I can certainly guide you in the right direction. And we have coaches on our team that can certainly help you understand the nuance of user stories. That's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to have a topic you want us to discuss, make sure you reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, or until we hear from you about our user story workshop, do take care.